Hello and welcome back. In this video, I'm going to simulate a character design workflow that fits into the blue sky portion of the concept art pipeline, but with a twist. I will be using ControlNet along with multiple extensions and 3D software to create this character you see right now. I'll start with an in-depth explanation of what each of the preprocessors do while using my own art pieces as test examples. After we're familiar with the functions of ControlNet, we'll start creating 2D pose templates using the Pose Editor. After we get comfortable creating and using character templates for concept ideas, we'll start incorporating 3D into our workflow using Blender to give us a proper rig with OpenPose skeleton, depth, and Canny data. This will help us greatly to get higher fidelity and reusability when we start generating our final character design. After we settle upon the initial design, I'll start going over how I inpaint areas of the image that need improvement. Also, I'll show how to generate higher fidelity hands by focusing on each hand in a close-up shot using Blender. Once the design is more fleshed out, I'll go over finishing touches on how to present a final character design. If all of this sounds interesting to you, let's get started. First off, what exactly is ControlNet? Simply put, you can think of ControlNet as a tool that helps guide prompts. The paper was written by 2 people and published on arXiv here. The code is at Iliasfield's repository at this link. However, the extension we'll be using is by Mikubil here, and it's also received the blessing of Iliasfield as the unofficial ControlNet extension. Before we get too ahead of ourselves, you'll need to install a few things. As always, you'll need the automatic 1111 web UI as well as the extension by Mikubil mentioned earlier. Next, you'll need to have downloaded the pre-trained weights from Hugging Face and place them in your ControlNet extension folder. You don't have to download the annotators because they'll just download on their own when you start using ControlNet. Third, you'll need another extension called OpenPose Editor by FKun 1326 at this repository. Lastly, I'm going to be using Blender 3.4 in addition to a blend file provided by ToyXYZ. If you don't know how to use Blender or you don't have any 3D CGI experience, don't worry, I will try to make the Blender process as painless as possible using screencast keys so you can follow along. Once you have prepared everything accordingly, we can dive in. So your web UI should look something like this after installing the ControlNet extensions. At the bottom of the text-to-image and image-to-image tabs is this new ControlNet tab. So this is text-to-image, and then in image-to-image you have the same thing down here. For the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to go back to the text-to-image tab and click on this ControlNet tab. Once you open it up, you can see all these options here. And it's kind of complicated, but it's also not that complicated. First off, I'm going to use an example image from my Fantasy Style version 1.6 examples I uploaded on Civet AI to show what exactly ControlNet does. So let me just drag this image over here, like so. Okay, so it's a picture of a boy in military attire. As I mentioned before, ControlNet acts as a guide for prompts, and to do this it uses different methods of guidance, which is in this drop-down list here, model, Canny, depth, HED, etc. I could start talking about this list in alphabetical order, but that's not that intuitive to me. Instead, let's start with the OpenPose skeleton. OpenPose is a machine learning algorithm that helps detect key points on the human body. So let's go ahead and select the OpenPose processor first on the left, right here. Some more options show up, but they're not exactly salient as of this moment. The button we're interested in is this one named Preview Annotator Result. Click this, and after some processing, you get this image of a multicolored skeleton, which is the OpenPose skeleton. To understand what you're looking at, you can consider the upper area here to be the eyes and the head. The lower area, or the 2 points here on either side, can be thought of as the iliac spine on the pelvis. The rest are the shoulders and the arms. Since this is more of an upper body camera shot, the rest of the skeleton, basically the legs, isn't here. Great, so we have the skeleton. Now what do we do with it? As I said before, ControlNet and its models act as a form of guidance. So since we're in the text to image tab, I'm going to put in some prompts and then generate something. So let me just copy over some prompts that I always use, and also change this to the settings I'm used to. So let's go 768 and maybe like 960. Okay, and down here on the model, we have to change this to OpenPose, and make sure your preprocessor and your model always matches up. If it doesn't, you'll get some very interesting results. And lastly, make sure to enable. This is very important as well. Okay, everything looks to be in order. Let's start and generate. Okay, so this is the result we got. Notice that the generated output follows the OpenPose skeleton. The arm on our right is bent at the elbow, and the left arm is in a neutral position. So although it's not like so correct, we can always fix this up when inpainting, or I'm going to show what I do in the rest of this video. And you can also see the OpenPose skeleton on the right here. So we can go ahead and generate again. Maybe this is a fluke. Maybe we're just getting lucky. But I doubt it. Okay, once again, this is our next image. Bent arm on the right, neutral arm on the left, and then everything looks to be the same as the skeleton. Before I go on to explain the other preprocessors and models, I'm going to first introduce what depth, color ID or clown pass, and normal pass are to you all. If you're a 3D artist, then you're already very familiar with these concepts. However, I believe the majority of people using Stable Diffusion will not know what these things are, so I'll go over it as it's an important fundamental concept to understand if we are to take advantage of ControlNet's potential. So let's jump into Photoshop. This is a painting I did in the world of this other series of images called Fleet City that I created about a year ago. These images were created by sculpting, modeling, and texturing objects in 3D, rendering them, then painting over them. The current image you see on the screen follows the same process, but I use mostly Stable Diffusion and image to paint over the base render plate. In particular, you'll see a folder here called passes, as well as clown pass, which are layers from a multi-layer .exr that I rendered out from Blender in the compositing tab. So we can take a close look, or a quick look. This is what the clown pass is. If you're very astute, then you can realize that this is basically a semantic segmentation pass. And if I open up passes, this is the depth pass. And I have a normal pass in here as well. This is what the normal pass looks like. If this makes no sense to you, don't worry, I'm going to explain it step by step. And if you're interested in what the image I got from Blender was, it's this one. This is the final painting. This is what I got from Blender. And this is what I got after using image to image in Stable Diffusion. So you can see that it helped me block in the sky, the ground that the lion's standing on, and it helps stylize the lion quite a bit. It's a very powerful tool. So let's get back to the passes I was talking about earlier. I'll go in the order in which it's the simplest to understand. There's multiple ways of getting a depth pass from Blender, but the way I do it is to render out a mist pass. The Blender file that we'll be using later for the OpenPose skeleton in 3D renders out the depth pass using another technique, and it's really just personal preference. When you first look at this depth pass, you can see varying shades of gray. So 100% gray is black, and 0% gray is white. And in both 2D and 3D, white means the presence of something. A white mask means that everything is revealed, and a black mask means that everything is hidden. So, knowing that, I'm going to add a white mask. And you see nothing happened because white means everything is revealed. However, let me undo that, and if I hold down Alt and then click this mask button, I create a black mask. And you see now the depth mask has disappeared and the layer underneath it has been revealed. So this is key, very key concept to understand. When you travel further away from the camera, there's a naturally occurring phenomenon called atmospheric haze or atmospheric perspective. This is a video of myself during a hike in Mount Mitake in Chichibu Tamakai National Park in Japan. I almost died on this solo hike due to my right leg giving out with about 10 kilometers left to go, so that's why I'm lying down in this rest area to gather my strength for the descent down the mountain. Please notice for me how the city in the distance is much more desaturated in color compared to where I am in the video. So if this still is not really making sense, let's go ahead and grab a still frame of this video and bring it to Photoshop. Here I am in Photoshop, and to make this grayscale, there's several ways to do it. I'll just make a layer and fill it with black and then put it on color blending mode, like so. Okay, if you take a closer look at the grayscale version, you can see that the values closest to us are darker, and the values further away are brighter. So this area is brighter. If you still are not convinced or you don't understand, we have one more technique, or I usually use this technique to check my values in my paintings. So go to your adjustment layers, create a levels layer. And then if you pull up the darks like this, you can see everything close to us is becoming dark. And you see how things in the distance here, this area, it's still pretty white. It's still pretty bright. And everything here in front of us is becoming darker. Look how dark I am. I'm basically like a shadow now. So let me go even darker to bring home the point. Look at the sky. Didn't I mention that this is called atmospheric haze or atmospheric perspective? Generally, when you do this technique, you can see that there's not much change in value in things far off in the distance, aka the sky or clouds or cityscape in the far in areas far away from you. Okay, and if you're still not convinced, you can go the other way. Instead of crunching up the darks, go the reverse. Blow out the highlights. Look how quickly things in the distance disappear. So I've only brought the whites up this much. If I just keep going, look how things further away from us are disappearing quickly. And see how everything close to us, like the rocks down here. Here, let me emphasize this. The rocks here are still very dark compared to the rest of the image. So this is a depth pass. To bring everything together, let's go back to the original depth pass here. See, once again, this depth pass indicates to us that this female is closer to us and this lion is farther away from us because it's brighter in value compared to what's in the foreground. Very nice. Okay, so we're back in the web UI. If we want to see the depth pass, all we have to do is just change the preprocessor to depth, like so, and then click on Preview Annotator Results. Now we have this depth pass that resembles what I just showed you in Photoshop. However, in the web UI, it's the inverse of it. See how things in the foreground are brighter and things in the background are darker. Please recall what I said about white and black masks. White means the presence of something. So in this case, everything that's brighter will receive the effect of the prompts. So if we run this with the same prompts, we should expect the general shape of the boy to remain the same, but the colors and such should change. Since this isn't an image-to-image operation, we can't see the effect on the background. So before we run this, make sure to change your model to the correct model. So we're using depth, and then go ahead and generate up here. Okay, so the generation has finished, and if we open this up, this is the new image. It kind of looks like Alizé from Final Fantasy XIV. Wow, okay, I did not expect that. But, so yeah, if you compare it with this boy right here, you can see his uniform is blue and white, and you can see this new one, it's more female because in the prompt it says one girl. And yeah, if you understand this logic, you can see that the shape is preserved quite well, and it's just a new take on the idea. This is a very pretty image. Wow, okay. And yeah, as always, the annotator result is here. So that's the depth pass. Next is the segmentation pass. This is directly correlated with the clown pass on the screen right now. Basically, the clown pass or color ID pass, both are interchangeable terminology, separates different objects by color. In this example, you can see that the character is separated by her hair, her clothes, her body, and the raiment she's carrying in her right hand. In the same vein, the lion is separated by color because I constructed the lion using different Dynameshed Z-spheres in ZBrush. So it's basically 3D taxidermy, as each limb and torso and head of the lion are all distinct objects, or in ZBrush, distinct subtools. The clown pass is pretty simple to understand, but I'll just try to show a little demo of it. The reason why it's so useful is because if you take your magic wand, you can select, and then you can select whatever you want. If you want to select more than one thing, you can hold down shift and then click on all these other things. And then if you want to change these to a different color, just see, you won't leak over into other portions of your painting. So that's the main reason why semantic segmentation or clown pass is very important in renders. But enough about 3D. Let's head back to the web UI. So once again, we're in the web UI, and let's try this out. Change the preprocessor here from depth to segmentation, and then click on the preview annotator result, like so. And we should get something. Okay, so we have this splotch of brownish crimson, almost like a maroon color. So what exactly does this mean? Well, if you go over to Ilyasville's description for his segmentation card here, he says that semantic segmentation was trained on the ADEK or ADE20K dataset. So let's head over to that page. Now we're on that page, and it says, see our GitHub repository for an overview of how to access and explore this dataset. So I do a little digging, and now I'm in this area of the dataset on GitHub. If you go to the color 150 folder, you can see a bunch of pictures here with various objects in alphabetical order. So to save you the trouble, I just head down to person, down here, person.jpg, click on it, and you can see the color here is that maroon color that we see in the Stable Diffusion web UI. So AliasView's trained segmentation model recognizes this as a person, which is pretty well done. So once again, let's run this with the same prompts. And don't forget to change your model to the segmentation model. We should expect an output of a person, probably a female because the prompt has one girl in it. In addition, it's possible that the pose or orientation of the character will be different, as this splotch of maroon acts as a inpainting mask, but remember, since it's red, it's only for humans. Okay, so let's go ahead and generate. So this is the first image that we get from the segmentation preprocessor, and you can see the woman is looking to the right, but in our original guidance picture, the boy is looking to the left. So why is that? The reason is if you click on this image and then you click on this segmentation mask, you can see that this silhouette fits into this silhouette, and this silhouette belongs to our original guidance image of the military boy. So you can see that the silhouettes are basically the same, but the prompt is interpreting it to be this way in this seed. So it's very interesting. Let's try again with another generation to see what we get. This is also a very pretty image. Anyway. Okay, see, this time we got someone looking over their right shoulder. But once again, the silhouette is the same. Very, very cool stuff. Lastly is the normal map. This is pretty difficult to understand if you're not a 3D artist. Essentially, normal maps are images that give detail to a base model. Right now I'm showing the original Blender scene, so you can all see what I mean. First off, if we look in the viewport shading mode and zoom in on this lion head or this lion sculpt, you can see that the model is not terribly detailed. It's actually rather like flat and smooth. The reason is that at render time, the normal map has all the baked surface detail projected onto the UV space of each object in this scene. So most of everything in this scene is UV'd, only some things are not, like the this ground plane or this mountain and the water. They are procedurally generated, so they have just automated UVs, which are really bad, but doesn't matter. So I'll go ahead and select the lion head here and bring up its normal map. So let me drag this out for another window. I'll go to the image editor and then I'll open up the location of my texture. So this is what a normal map looks like. It's usually this color, blue, and then some red and then green. Mostly it's usually blue though. And the reason why we have baked normal maps is because without them, if we choose to work without normal maps, a normal sculpt is it's in the range of tens of millions of polygon faces, and it'll take like minutes to render one frame, which is, if you add up a scene with like 1 billion polygons, think of how long it'll take to render a single frame. So what I want you all to take away from this explanation is that normal maps are the preservation of detail. Also, on a side note, if you want to learn how to get a normal pass out of Blender, this is how you do it. It's very primitive and rudimentary, and it's also wrong in the sense that the lighting is off. But anyway, so go up here to the right here, click on matte cap, and then make sure you're on single, not object, not material, not random, single. And then make sure this color is white, pure white. So 0 hue, 0 saturation, and then 1 for the value. And this is a normal pass. Okay, so now that you know what it looks like, let's go back to the web UI. Once again, back in the web UI, you know the drill. Preprocessor, change it to normal map. And I'll just change the model to normal preemptively. I'll go ahead and preview the annotator result. This is the normal map that it gave us. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure this is not how it looks like if you actually took it to Blender and rendered your object, but this is what the preprocessor is telling us. So let's go ahead and generate once again to see what we get. Okay, here we go. And this is the output. It kind of looks like Timothée Chalamet from Dune. Yeah, so you can see that most of the details of his general outfit was preserved, even more so than compared with depth, because you could see that his little satchel down here is still here, and the hairstyle is the same, and his chest is covered with his shirt. But more or less, it seems pretty similar to the depth pass. We can go again and see what this gives us. Okay, once again, we get a new thing, but the satchel still there. The coat, different color, but yes, it seems to have made him a little bit more handsome. Yeah, not bad. Okay, so next up are the rest of the preprocessors, which will go by very easily and very quickly because they're on an order of magnitude easier to understand. Next up is edge detect maps. The specific edge detect preprocessors and models are Canny, right here, holistically nested edge detection, HED, and multi-scale line segment detector, or MLSD. The Canny preprocessor is a rule-based edge detection algorithm invented in the 1980s. Anyway, let's go ahead and click the preview annotator to see what we get. So you can see, there it is, edge detection. I'm also going to show the HED to see the difference, like so. And aside from being a deep learning algorithm or model, there's not much difference. Just choose what you think is nice. I'll go back to Canny for now and generate. Hold on, make sure this is Canny in the model. Okay. Okay, so this is the first result we get from Canny, and you can see that the image has changed, but the lines are still very intact. Let me just show the annotator for Canny once again. You can see the lines here are acting as the guide for this new image. And yeah, I like it. It's very cool. This time I'll try HED and then change this model to HED. I'll click annotator result once again so we have consistency. And let's go again. With HED we get this image, and he seems very K-pop starish. And remember, white is the presence of something and also the guide. So you can see the edges of the white are still prevalent here, but everything inside of it, inside the lines, is changed. So you can think of this as a coloring book, and you're just recoloring the inside of the coloring outline. The last of the edge detectors is the MLSD preprocessor, so this one right here. If you think about the name, multi-scale line segment detector, you would probably think that it wouldn't work well on human beings, and you would be correct in your thought process. So for the next example, I'm going to go into one of my favorite 3D programs, which is a computer-aided design software called Moment of Inspiration 3D, and pull out one of the hard surface models I created there to fully show the potential of the MLSD preprocessor and model. Alright, back in Stable Diffusion Web UI, I'll bring in my hilt here, like so, and change my preprocessor to MLSD and my model to MLSD. Let's preview the annotator result as always to see what we get. Okay, it didn't work that well. Let's change the threshold probably. Let's see. Okay, maybe lower. Okay, we're getting more and more, but we might have to go really low. Okay, this probably isn't working that well, but let's see what we can get from this, because there are some curved surfaces in this design. So instead of DB fantasy art and all this, I'm just going to say a fantasy sword, hilt, and vivid, cool looking. Okay. Let's see what this gives us. I'm not so confident in it, but that's the fun part. Okay, so this is what it gave us, and yeah, you can see that it turned the sword hilt into a person, an armored person. Maybe I'll be more specific with my prompt, but this is actually very cool as well. Not bad, not bad. Okay, let me change this just to a sword hilt. And I'll add the words hard surface design. Okay, let's go again. Okay, so this time we get this Arctic environment. I'm still not getting the sword I want, but maybe I'll emphasize it more here. Why stable diffusion? Why? Weapon. Sharp object. Okay, so now we have this sword, and it's not really taking into consideration the rest of it because, as I said, multi-line segment. These curves are not lines, I guess. They're arcs, to be specific. But you can already see the potential here, right? You can do very cool hard surface design already with just these few lines. Which brings me to the final preprocessor we haven't talked about, which is Scribble. Here I am in Photoshop. For Scribble, we're going to need a drawing, so I'll go ahead and make a very quick drawing right now. Let's see. This is going to be a head, I hope. Wow, drawing is hard. Head. Okay, and then or whatever. And then you need a nose. Got the nose. Need a mouth. There we go. Then you need some eyes. And yeah, it looks great to me. And I'll export it, and we're going to use the scribble that I just drew. Like that. Very nice. And I'll change the preprocessor to Scribble, or actually fake Scribble. I'll change the model to Scribble as well. So I don't want it to adhere to the Scribble so much, so I'll reduce the weight a little to like 0.6 for now. Preview the annotator. Yeah. Okay, so you can see that it sees my Scribble as that. So let's go. Oh wait, hold on. I don't want to make a sword. I want a person. Should be good to go. Generate. Okay, we got something a little bit marginally better, but of course it needs work. So there you have it. Those are the preprocessors and models of ControlNet as of this moment. There's a few other preprocessors I haven't gone over, like depth, Lares, and PidNet, but don't worry, if the opportunity arises later in the video, I will cover them. Now that we have a better understanding of what all these preprocessors do, I'm going to start applying these preprocessors to character design through OpenPose, and to do that, I will be making use of the OpenPose Editor extension first. So now I'm going to start creating a character template. The character template is an important part of the character design pipeline process. Usually before this stage, you'll have already created some thumbnail sketches, but this portion could also function as your thumbnail sketch process. Posing this skeleton is pretty straightforward. Basically, you just grab onto one of these key points and move it around. If you want to move multiple key points like this entire left arm, just select it by dragging like so, and then you can hold down on this rectangle and move it like that. However, this is not an inverse kinematic rig, so it's not physically accurate. So in an inverse kinematic rig, if I move this hand right here, the rest of this should move along with it, but it doesn't because this is just a skeleton in 2D and not a rig. And in addition, the reason why this probably isn't a good idea to use is that there's no depth preservation because it's a monocular image, basically only 2 dimensions. So these are the 2 glaring problems with it right now, among other minor or tertiary problems. But no matter, this is still a good tool if we want to get very basic ideas fleshed out quickly. So you can pose this from the ground up the way you like it. However, not everyone has that kind of time, so what we're going to do is detect from an existing image. So I click from detect from image, and I'm going to select, for the first pose, I'll select this image by Chuyang Park, I think. Yeah, there we go. It took a while to load in, and this is the pose that comes up. However, this is kind of not right. So basically, if you look on the OpenPose website, the center dot should be the nose, and then these sides should be the sides of the head, and these dots in the middle are the eyes. So that looks okay to me. Doesn't have to be perfect, as long as it's understandable, and this chest might have to be over like that more. So this looks more or less fine for me. Don't worry about the resolution because we'll be taking this into an image editor like Photoshop to composite them anyway in the end. So once you have something you're happy with, just save the PNG. Okay, so now we want to make use of this skeleton we have here, right? To make sure that it's actually working. So it's time for the sanity check. Is our OpenPose actually working? Open up your control model, drag in your OpenPose skeleton that we just created in the OpenPose editor. We don't need a preprocessor, remember? And just change this to OpenPose. And if everything looks right, we can go ahead and do a generation. The image that we get should adhere pretty closely to this pose, but you never know. Maybe Stable Diffusion has other ideas in store for us. Okay, this is the image I got. You can see that the arm is bent up like that at the elbow, and then the other arm is flailing out, or not flailing out, just resting neutrally on the side. Yeah, this is pretty interesting. We can go one more just to see that it's adhering to the skeleton. Okay, so this is the next image, and you can see it's pretty faithful to the original image. Yeah, this is pretty nice. Very cool. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the OpenPose editor and make more templates. I repeated the same process using the detect from image on a different image, and this is the pose that I ended up getting. However, you can see that there's no left arm in this pose. So I will probably take this into Photoshop and delete that key point by painting it over with black. So let's get to it. There's two pretty big changes we'll have to make. First is what I mentioned before, which is getting rid of that left shoulder. I'll just make a selection, paint it out with black. Done. Next is that make sure the resolution of your skeleton fits your text prompt. My resolution in my skeleton, or my resolution for the generation is 768 by 960. So I want to make sure that this skeleton fits in that resolution. So I'll create a new document and then copy this over like that. And you can see that it doesn't match up with the resolution. So I'll have to resize this accordingly. So that looks okay. Something like that. And realize that the background is white. So we'll have to fill that with black. Like so. Now I'll go ahead, save and export this and try it out in Photoshop or in Stable Diffusion. Same deal as always, drag it over here. No preprocessor, preview the annotator. Yep, it's in frame. Let's go. Generation. Okay, now it's still kind of unclear on what's happening. Let's generate again just to make sure. But it seems to be interpreting the left arm still, but hopefully it won't. Okay, it's more or less there, I would say. Crossing over on the legs is confusing it a bit, but we'll see, we'll see. Okay, I guess I would say that I'm okay with this. We'll see how it functions in the combined skeleton template, but let's just keep this on hand for now and make 2 more skeletons. Alright, next up I'll do a reverse pose, so looking from the back. And I'll pick this one. Maybe it's better. Okay, so it kind of figured out what to do. But, oh wow, this is a mess. We might have to remove this blue part because it might think that we're looking straight on at the character, which is not happening. Okay, so here I am in Photoshop once again, and I think that since I want a rear pose, I want to paint out the eyes and the neck. So I'll do this by creating a new layer, like so, selecting everything in between the sides of the head, as I mentioned before, just painting black all over it. And I'll paint more black just in case, and then if I want to get rid of the extra black, just create a layer mask and paint black out like so. Okay, that looks fine for now, and remember to keep consistent resolution. So 768 by 960, create a new layer, or create a new document. Okay, and then resize. Okay, and then fill this with black. Okay, so that looks good. Now I'll bring it into Stable Diffusion Web UI. In the Web UI now, the reason why I knew how to erase this out is because I tried it with the non-erased version, and yes, even though this is cropped, you can see that it's giving me a frontal pose. Hopefully this will give us what we want. Go ahead and preview the annotator. Yep. And generate. Okay, great. We have a backwards or of pose from the rear now. So this is good news. I'll just generate one more. Okay, another backwards view. Great. Last pose. For the final pose, I'm going to do an orthographic side view, and I felt like the earlier version I did using the detect from image on the sideways girl did not turn out that well. So I'm just going to reset this. I'm going to set my resolution to what I want. And then I'm going to add a skeleton and just pose it manually. Even though it's a pain, we have no choice. Sometimes we have to do this. Okay, last pose. Hopefully this works because this is pretty tedious. Let's go generate. Okay, so the head is tilted forward a lot. Maybe this is because my blue marker is wrong. We'll see if it's consistent. Okay, so yeah, it is because the head, or because of the blue marker. I'll fix this up and then try again. Okay. Very minor change. Let's try again. Alright. I would say I'm happy with this. Legs are a little short though. But yeah. Let's go ahead and composite all of these together. What I did was I brought in all the poses into Photoshop and arranged them like so. And when you bring them into Photoshop, if you don't use black masks to cut off some of this, then you can see that this image has black rectangles around it, or it's in a black rectangle. So make sure to cut off the unwanted part with the mask. So basically like so. And try to make them all the same height. This one on the left, I just noticed, is a little too tall. And make sure you properly name this so you know what you're doing. Okay, so this looks like it should be good to go. And for the resolution, I made it a 2:1 aspect ratio, so it's 960 pixels high and then 1920 pixels wide. As I mentioned before, my resolution is a 2:1 aspect ratio, so 1920 by 960. And once again, ControlNet, enable, model, OpenPose, and next I'll drag in my template here, like so. And if everything looks to be fine, let's go ahead and generate after I preview the annotator. Okay, good. So let's try it out. Okay, so the generation has finished, and this is what we get. Don't you think this is really cool looking? I mean, if you had just this, and even with the faces messed up and the anatomy all wrong, even though you have all these irregularities, or you could call them mistakes, if you pass this to your art director like so, he or she would be extremely pleased with this already. As someone who knows both 3D and 2D techniques, I would be really happy with taking this to a next level concept, as in like a 3D model or creating a very beautiful 2D illustration. However, this is only the surface of the template. Right now, we can generate this, but now we can source many different ideas. So I can turn this batch count up to 8 or 16 and just let this keep running. And then when I find something, I'll take that concept and then take it to the next level, because I'll know what seed I'm on. So let's go ahead and do that. Turn the batch count up to maybe 20 or so. And also, I like the stockings, but I prefer having dark colored stockings, because if your lower half is darker in tone or value, then it brings more attention to the upper body. So this is very important during a character design. So I'll change that, and then I'll run a batch of 20 and see what we get. Of course, this will take a moderate amount of time, so I'll probably go do something else and generate. In just a couple of minutes, you're able to put together 20 character reference sheets to hand off to your imaginary art director, which is probably yourself. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of them. Wow. These are pretty cool. Yeah. Oh, this one's nice. Oh, this one's really good. Oh wow, this one's pretty beautiful. Oh wow, yeah, I like this one too. This looks like a royal guard or something for an imaginary crown or something. This is like more military style. I love it. This seems like a Riot Games skin line. Cool, cool. Oh wow. These are all like really cool. Yep, so there you go. And however, I want to point out that there's a small problem. You can notice that there are inconsistencies in the designs across all the posed figures. So you can see like this one, she has a sash and then a long pareo on the side here. Here she doesn't have a pareo, but she's holding a whip. Here she's holding a sword. Here she's holding like two swords. So you can see there's inconsistencies in the character design. In addition, the anatomy may or may not be off. It looks fine in this image. Actually, in most of the image I see, the anatomy looks pretty good actually. Wow, this is like this leg right here is anatomically very correct muscle-wise. You have your rectus femoris, and yeah, this is pretty, yeah, accurate. And yeah, so now that we have an idea of what the prompts output, I want to create a more fleshed out single character design of a character facing forwards. So maybe I'll take this one or a pose like this and then create a very more detailed character design. And the idea I have in mind is I want to create a friend for the character in the world that I showed in the series of paintings at the beginning of the video. And in addition, you might ask why. Why not individually fix each of these posed characters in image to image, then create an embedding or character lore for reproducibility? So you can see here that there's inconsistency in the chest area. And okay, so you can see here she has green sleeves and it's more of a hoodie. She has no hoodie here. Yeah, so it would take a lot of work to fix all of these up. I don't really want to spend so much time and fix up each of these in image to image and in painting. However, this is more of a secondary and tertiary reason. The primary reason is that there's already many people with existing character art of a character they really liked or designed or created. So what they want to do is they want to remix the single character image and repose it or reimagine it in a different way. Second of all, I want to show how you can get a cleaner output from Stable Diffusion with the combination of multiple control nets with different maps. So right now we're only using an OpenPose skeleton, so OpenPose model. However, with the help of Blender and a blend file provided by Toy XYZ, we can modify a 3D rig skeleton and render Canny, depth, and OpenPose maps along with hands and feet. This will definitely speed up the process when generating a final character design. So let's get into it. Before we start getting into Blender, we'll need the blend file. To download it, go to this link, and it's created by Toy XYZ, as I mentioned before. Here you can add a price if you don't want to pay for it yet, or you want a trial, you can just put in 0 and then add to cart. Once you download and unzip it, you should have this OpenPose 4.7 folder. Navigate inside it and then double click on the blend file, like so. After the file opens up, you should have something like this. I'm going to enable the screencast keys so you guys can actually see what I'm doing. So see in the bottom left corner, there's this font telling you what hotkeys I'm pressing. So to navigate the camera, use your middle mouse button. This is the rotate. Like so. To zoom in and out, drag with the control button and middle mouse button. Like so. Lastly is panning, which is the shift and middle mouse button held down together. Like so. Okay, great. Now that you know how to maneuver in 3D space, let's take a look at the outliner on the left, which is this area over here. These boxes are called collections, and all these boxes are sub-collections of the current scene collection up here. To turn collections on and off, just click the checkbox next to each collection like so. So if I want to turn off these bones, just click that, and look, the bones are gone. Okay, so if you decide to toggle off a collection, it won't show up in both the viewport and the final render. So keep that in mind. If you decide to turn off a collection, it won't show up in both the viewport and the final render. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you want to render out your scene separately. So this is more of an advanced technique, but it's a good thing to keep in mind. Next, let's talk about the rig. This is an inverse kinematic rig, but don't worry about what that means. First of all, the more important thing you should be concerned with is how do you actually use this? Well, don't worry. To modify your rig, you first have to have it selected and then go up here in the top left corner and click on pose mode. Currently, you're in object mode. So go to pose mode and now you're in pose mode. If you're like me and you don't use this, but instead you use the hotkeys, you can select your rig, your control rig, and then press Control and Tab. And then you also jump into pose mode like so. Once you're here, you can select different parts of the control rig, which are these boxes and circles. But you might ask, what do I do with these boxes and circles? Don't worry, I will explain it now. There's three main modes of transformations you can do in 3D software. The first one is move, which is the G key. The second is rotate, which is the E or the R key here. And the last one is the scale tool, which is the S key. Like so. Usually you don't want to scale in your rig. Sometimes you do, but usually you don't. And then rotate is pretty useful because see, you can rotate like that. Okay, so let's start modeling a pose then. Let's start posing our model now. Usually you want to have some references on hand to work off of. So on the left here is my pure ref sheet. I'll primarily be looking at this female model by Nyan Nyan on ArtStation. It's actually a fan sculpt of one of Daydream Park's earliest works. Here. The other image here is a sculpture of Augustus de Prima Porta. It's a sculpture in one of the Vatican museums, and I have a photograph of it somewhere in my hard drive that I took when I visited Rome, but it's somewhere deep in the backlog. Anyway, the reason why it's here is because it's the most famous example of the adlocution pose, which is the orator pose. The reason why I'm showcasing it is because the pose of the 3D woman is basically an offshoot of the adlocution pose. Essentially, the adlocution pose is a contrapposto pose with one arm raised to show a position of power or dominance. You might ask, what is contrapposto? Well, I'll show you how to construct it in 3D, but you can also take a look at one of my sculptures, or two of them. So here, this is Jester, and while the torso is a little bit too long, you can see that the pelvis is tilted down to the left here, and the torso is tilted back to the right, like so. This is basically contrapposto. You have to balance the weight somehow so you don't fall over. And then you have a back view of a female sculpture here, and it's kind of like contrapposto, but you can't see too much of it. And Jester again from a different angle. So as you can see, down here on the left and down on the right, so balancing it out. Okay, so now that we know the basis of contrapposto, we have to start with the rig with the pelvis. In this reference picture, you can see that the pelvis is coming up on the left side, so the left side should be higher than the right side. And then to do that, you would think that you want to modify this thing right here. It's actually not the one you want to change. You want to change this circle. So pull it up to the left, and you can see the pelvis here going up. Isn't that kind of strange? Indeed. So next, if you take a closer look at this image, you can see that the torso is leaning to the right. However, this is kind of a design flaw, because if you lean to the right, you have no resting leg. Your resting leg is your left leg. So if you're leaning to the right, you would fall over. And to prove my point, here is the David. And if you compare it with the 3D female model, right? You can see the right leg is coming out like that. The left leg is the resting leg. However, the torso is curving to the left to counterbalance the weight. So you want your torso to be resting on this left leg. However, the torso in this picture is resting on the right leg, which it's really awkward to rest there. So but I like the rest of this image. It's just that this torso should be to the left. That's why it's here as a reference. But of course, we want to make our own judgments. So we will also learn from the old master himself as well. Before I go any further with the posing, I'm just going to undo this pose. So Control Z, and I'm back at the neutral pose. The reason why is because we haven't actually saved this neutral pose. What if we want to come back to the neutral pose? How do we do that? Do we just open up a brand new blend file? No, we're better than that. And Blender is also better than that. It knows that we have to do this, or this will be a very useful function. So if we want to preserve or save a pose that we've modeled or rigged, basically what we do is we go to this animation tab. This animation tab will only show up if you're in the pose mode. So if I go to the object mode, there's no animation tab anymore. So to go back, click on the rig, control rig, and then control tab. And now there's an animation tab. So here we go. Just create pose asset. I think you might have to select everything. I don't remember. So create pose asset. And then this is the base pose. And now if I pose this back to the pelvis like before, and then if I create another pose asset, yes, it's right here. So it seems that I didn't have to select everything. So if I want to go back to default, I click here. If I want to go to my pelvis tilted up to the left, I just click that one. See? It's very handy. Once the pelvis is posed, we want to go ahead and pose the torso or the shoulders now. So you can see that this lower black line is slanted from left to right, with the left side being higher. And we have that here. To counterbalance that, we need to select this shoulder control rig up here and tilt it so that the right side is higher than the left. So let's go ahead and grab that and then do that. There we go. Depending on how dramatic you want it to be, your mileage may vary, but this is good enough for me. However, you can see that we need the body to move to the left a little bit more. There's a few ways you can do it. You can either take this third control here and do that. So rotate it so it comes over like that more. That's one way. The other way is to pull back on the pelvis so it's not so high. It's really up to you what you want to do. So I'm going to go with my gut on this one and just go with something like that for now. Next up, I want to start posing the head. So it's kind of annoying to keep looking at this camera right here. So I'm going to go to the camera collection and just turn it off for now. That's much better. Okay, so if we look at the head here on David, it's rotated to the right and looking up. We don't want too much of him looking away or our character looking away, but we can rotate the head a little bit. So to do that, select this inner neck circle and just go to the top view and then rotate. So it's like that. And if you wanted to look down a little bit more, you can always do this. Yeah, not too much, but that looks okay for now. The next thing we want to tackle is the position of the legs and the feet. So you can see from this back view and front view that one of the legs is further in front of the other. So the right leg will be in front. So grab this box and then G and move it forward like so. Very simple. And you can see that the knee is inside a little bit more. So to do this, you can grab that joint and do that. Yeah, like that. And now we want to position the other foot. But for this foot, you can also see that it's curved out a little bit like that. So do that. Yeah, that looks good. And you can also see that the heel is up. So to control that, you take this right there, rotate it up like so. And you can see it gives a nice bend to the knee, which is intentional because that is how these IK rigs work. So you can do that, or you can also do that as well. Both are fine. Okay, that looks pretty close to our reference image. And now for the left leg, we want to pull it back as well. So go to the top view, pull it back like so. And then you can see that it comes in at a slant. So we want it to come in like that, but not too much. And also realize that the leg is turned outwards. So make sure that's being reflected like so. So you can see that our pose is becoming very dramatic. Don't forget about the heels coming up. Very important. So grab this arc right here. Just rotate it up like so. And you don't want it to bend. So to solve, because it seems like it's more in a locked position. So just pull it down like that. And you can see that this right foot is not following. So you also want to pull that down as well. So perhaps I'll just pull this up and then manually adjust the bend here. Yep, that looks good to me. Okay, anything else we haven't gotten besides the arms? Perhaps this head is looking off into the distance too far. Let's bring it back. I'm not sure what this does because it kind of breaks the rig. Maybe it's, I don't know. I don't know what it's for, but okay. Next up are finally the arms. So I'm going to start with the left arm because it looks easier to do. We have these collarbone rigs here, and I'll just show you what they do. So it brings the shoulders down like so. So I'll go ahead and do that. So we have a nice balance. So here, and then here, and then head back like that. So it's very dynamic. A lot of zigzagging. So this left hand looks pretty neutral. So I'll bring it down like that. So, how do I want to do this? Yeah, okay. And then rotate it, just bring it down more. it's a little bit further out, so let's make sure that's reflected. Then it's bent in like that. And also the shoulders are turned. If you look at David, the left shoulder is in front, like slightly behind the right shoulder. So if you want to do that, you do that and rotate it like that. So, and then that would mean that this left arm is a little bit more behind. Like that. When you work in 3D, it's always a good idea to keep rotating around. Okay, that looks okay for now. I'm going to do the hands last, but now let's tackle this right arm. So grab that hand, and then we have to bring it forward like that. Rotate it up. Yeah, it has to be in more, no problem. And then kind of like a come at me hand. So you can see that with our rig, we have very simple shapes, but we have captured the essence of our character quite well. And it does look pretty nice so far. Very expressive. Okay, so next up is posing the hand. Hands are considered their own sculpture as well, so I'll try to give some tips about that next. Just checking the pose again. Let's take a quick break from posing the model and head over to ZBrush. This is a figure of my hand that I sculpted a few years ago as an in-depth study. One thing that separates an okay hand from a great hand is the natural pose of the fingers. If you observe closely from this profile view, you can see that the second knuckle, so the one here, and the third knuckle here share a roughly 2:1 ratio in the bend. So if this is a bend of 30 degrees here, this should have a bend of 15 degrees. Okay, here I am in Photoshop. I just want to go over what 2:1 means really quick. So create a layer, like so, and for example, if this is 30 degrees of an arc, this should be 15 degrees of an arc. If you don't understand how I got that, let me show another angle. So let's go here. On this example, we have our lines like so. This is a 90-degree angle, or as close to it as you can get. Now we draw the same vertical parallel to this one, but however, the bend here, what is that? Half of 90, so this 45 degrees. Do you see how the 2:1 ratio works? 2:1. Now that we understand how the 2:1 ratio works, we can see how the fingers should be positioned naturally. This is sculpted, I think I said 2 or 3 years ago. Now that I'm looking at it again, it's okay, but it's so much below the level I am right now compared to where I am right now. Yeah, so once again, let's observe like so. When we're posing in Blender, we should keep this in mind to get a very good looking hand. In Blender once again, and let's start posing the fingers on each hand. If you can't really see what your figure looks like so far, what you can do is you can go up here and then turn off the show overlays. So this way you can get a better idea of what your pose is looking like. And yeah, maybe these toes have to be positioned a little bit more down. So you can do that by grabbing this in the front, this little oval, and just pulling it, rotating it down like that. Okay, so this hand looks like it's spread out a little bit. So to pose fingers, oh, this hand looks like it's, oh, okay, this hand doesn't seem to be very proportioned well. Oh well, so to rotate your fingers, you rotate from the first circle down here, or the first knuckle, and remember the 2 to 1, so this would be like a natural hand pose. And then if you want to pose like this part of the thumb, like this greater area of the thumb, you'll have to use this circle here. See how it works? Yeah, this is a very standard control rig. And next, you can tell that the fingers are spread apart, like so. So let's just follow that. Select the first knuckle circle, spread that apart, and then select the pinky, move it like that. And you might have to use the grab like that. Let me turn the screencast keys back on. Yeah, so rotate, and then the hand is a little bit rotated in on itself as well. So now we have to bring the fingers up in a curl, so curl this up, and then curl this up, and just remember to keep in mind what a natural hand pose looks like. Let's compare with the hand over here. I'm gonna have to bring this in a little. Is that too much of a spread? Yeah, probably. So these fingers are a little long compared to this, so I'll just leave it for now. Maybe fix it in the generation, but you can see from this angle that the thumb is more folded in on itself. So the posing is more or less completed for now. If we turn off the overlays, we can see our beautiful work of art. Yes, this looks pretty good. Next up, remember we hid the camera, right? So let's bring the camera back, like so. And how do we see through the camera? Well, next I'm going to use a hotkey, it's F3. This way it brings up this little search bar, and then we're going to search align active camera to view. So this is the hotkey for it, Control Alt Numpad 0. But if you have it here, you can actually right click it and add it to your quick favorites. So do that. And then to access your quick favorites, press Q. So align active camera to view. So this is your active camera right now. But we want to get this in frame, right? This is like not in frame right now. Well, it is, but not centered. Next, we go again, F3, and we want this walk navigation. And then this time that's us add to quick favorites again by right clicking on it. And then if we press Q, we have walk navigation. And now we can press the WASD keys like so. And then if you want to slow it down, I think you press Control to slow it down like that while maneuvering. Yep. Want to see our camera now? I have this add-on called Camera, and then if you click on this camera icon, it goes there. If you don't have this add-on, I don't know what you have to do actually, sorry. So yeah, this is how you look through the camera. Now that we have our camera set up to the angle and view we want it to be, we can go ahead and start rendering out our passes. If we go up here and click the last icon, which is viewport shading, we can get a preview of the render it's going to give us. So if we disable the overlays, we can see that we're going to get an OpenPose skeleton. So let's go ahead and change back to this viewport shading and do a render. So how does rendering work, right? Well, once again, let's go to F3. Very convenient. This is like a hack to find anything you need, and then type in render image. So let's just go ahead and add this to our quick favorites once again. And then to go to quick favorites, press Q, and then let's just go ahead and render image. And let's see what this gives us. It gives us this pass, but remember that it renders everything at once. For now, let's take this OpenPose skeleton and just save it. So go to image up here, save as, and then save it wherever you want. I'm just going to save it in the Blender folder. Now that you know how rendering works, I'm going to change the resolution of the camera to fit my needs. So I go with 768 by 960, and I'm just going to change it in the format here. So my camera should change, so let me go ahead and access my camera once again. Okay, so this is 768 by 960 and everything is still in frame. Let's go ahead and render once again. Q, render image. Okay, and then this is the depth pass, but we don't want that right now. What we want to go to is this view layer, and then on the view layer, we'll go to image, save as, and then I'll save here in this folder and call it OpenPose. And let me just check one more time. I don't want any compression, and I'll save it as 16-bit. Yeah. That looks fine. Next up is Canny. So to do the Canny pass, next up we want a Canny pass for the outlines of the hands and feet. So to do that, we're going to enable this Canny collection right here. It'll look like that now. And then we'll turn off the OpenPose bones. So you should only have the hands and feet showing up right now. Let's go again to quick favorites, render image. And once again, depth shows up, but let's just ignore it for now and go to view layer. And this is our Canny pass. Lastly is the depth pass. So this is pretty simple. If you open up the compositor, so drag over there and pull it out, go to the compositor window. It's actually already set up here as a mix. So normalize and mix. So we don't have to worry about it. And if we just click render now, once I can get over here, okay, render image. Here we go. This is the depth pass. And if we want to save it, same as always, just image, save as, and then call this one depth. And yeah, no compression, 16 bits. Now that we have all our passes, we can take it back into Stable Diffusion and do some multi-ControlNet stuff. In the web UI, once again, we want to test out the effects of our maps from Blender using ControlNet, but first we should decide on a seed. If we go to the images extension and look at the generations of the character templates we did before, we can go ahead and pick one that we like. Maybe this one. This one's pretty cool. And then I'll send it to text to image. And then I'll change the width so it's 768 by 960, which is the resolution I rendered the maps at in Blender. And we'll keep the same seed just to see what ControlNet is doing. So let's go ahead and first pass, which is OpenPose. OpenPose in, enable, and change the model to OpenPose. Preview the annotator. Yep. And yeah, batch count of 1. Let's go. Okay, so we have our picture here, and you can see that it's a little confused. There's two forearms. However, you can see that the contra posto pose is being replicated or recreated pretty faithfully, which is good. And we have our map there. Next, we'll go with another control model, the second one, or control model 1, enable, and this time we'll bring in the depth pass. Here we go. And change the model to depth. Whoops, not that one. This one, depth. And I'm going to turn down the weight a little bit to maybe 0.3 and also turn the guidance start up to 0.3. This means that the hands or the hands and the feet will start generating later on in the prompt. Okay, so let's go ahead and generate now. Hopefully we won't get 2 arms, but we never know. Okay, so the generation's done and there's still a second arm here, but you can see that the hand is taking form. It's kind of like a fist now, which is fine. The leg, however, kind of looks like it's grabbing onto something, which is, we'll see what happens. We'll go to the next control model and we'll bring in the Canny map. So Canny right here, enable, and Canny. And preview the annotator. Yep, that looks right to me. And I'll also pull down the weight to 0.3 and then the guidance start to 0.3 once again, and we'll generate. Okay, here we go. The hand is still there, but you can see that it's disappearing. And usually we get all of our maps showing. However, it's not showing, but it's saying that our control nets are enabled, so you can see true. Yeah, so I'm not sure why they're not showing up, and you can see that it's very clearly having an effect. So yeah, we'll see. Okay, so now that we more or less have proven that our maps are having an effect, let's start going with random seed, like so, turning the batch count up to maybe like 30 or 40 because we're searching for concepts now. And I wonder if I should add shorts. I kind of like this, but stylish techwear, shorts. Yeah, I'll add shorts with a little bit of emphasis. 1.1, 1.2, okay. And yeah, that looks good to me. I'll generate a ton and then see which one I like best. The generation has finished and we've got this grid of 30 images. So let's go through them and see how it went. Okay. Wow, this one is really cool. Yeah, it's not my thing. Yeah, no. The OpenPose skeleton seems to have a lot of weight. This one's also pretty nice. Oh, this one's cool too. Not bad. It's interesting, but yeah. Okay, so you might have not noticed, or maybe you did notice, that when I did the generation previous to this one with a batch of 20 or 30, there was only the OpenPose map, and there wasn't the depth and the Canny map. But in the prompts down here, it said it was enabled. I just restarted my web UI and ran it again just to check if it really was working, and I was able to reproduce my image with the same seed and all the same prompts and the same maps. So yes, it was working, it just didn't show the detect maps. I'm in the images extension right now, and I think I've settled on this one to take further as a character design. It has like this sci-fi mechanical stuff going on. Maybe she's an engineer or something in the Fleet City. That would be really cool to take further. So as of now, I'm going to save this image and open it up in Photoshop because I feel like there's some proportion issues that need to be fixed, and I want to clean up the image before sending it to the Inpainting tab. Okay, so see you in Photoshop. So I have two versions here. This is one and this is another one. This is just one with slightly different settings, but still the same seed. So I think I'm going to enable this one because there's some things I like from this image. I'll make a black mask. And let's see, soft brush. Then let's paint in some places like that. Yeah, that looks like kind of an improvement. Let me see. Let's just click on that to save it. I like the profile though. No, I like the better. Okay. Sticky belts. Okay, now I'm going to create a new layer. Control-Alt-Shift-E to create a new layer, and I'll just. So this has everything baked in now. Time to correct stuff with the good old spot healing brush. Sure. And now I'm going to pull the head down a little bit. It's the neck's a little too long, so just select everything like that. And then right click, layer via copy. Like that, bring it down. Yeah, much better. Okay, what else is there? This shoe thing doesn't look that right. Oh, I see another problem. Here, this leg muscle is a little off. This is the vastus medialis. It's usually not so pronounced like that. So you can soften the form up like that. I'll use the mixer brush. Just mix it very lightly. Okay, while I'm down here, this part of the leg is a little not right, so select it, spot healing that up. Okay, and then you can see that this leg has to be more in line with the form here, or the thigh, so create a new layer, merge everything in, and next I'll select this part and then liquefy. So this is what my liquefier window looks like. Just start moving it in. It's like 3D, it's like 2D sculpting, basically. Okay, that looks fine for now. And then just mixer brush this up, smooth out the form. Back in the web UI, before we want to work on our image, we'll have to upscale it a little bit. So I'll upscale it by 2 for now, and I'm going to use this Ultra Mix Balanced. So let's go ahead and upscale. Okay, so we have our upscaled image here, very nice. Before we work on this, we'll also have to reuse our old prompts. So let's go to images, text to image, and find this one. We'll send this to image. It's here, very nice. Let's change the seed back to -1. like so. And now we need to send our extras upscale to the Inpaint. So click that. It's here. And just go ahead and start inpainting the face like so. And denoise maybe 0.25. And only masked 768. I'll change all this just to beautiful female face and generate one just to see what's going on. Okay, let's see what we have. Sure. It's really hard to tell since the resolution is so low. I might just go look at these in the external browser. Let's see. This one? Is this one? Sure, this one. Back in Blender once again. So the reason why we're coming back to Blender is, remember that we had a camera that was capturing the entire rig? However, I suspect that's the main reason why the depth map was not high resolution enough to capture the hand detail. So if we want to remedy this situation, all we have to do is just zoom in closer on the hands. This is our new render. Our hand will be in frame with the body mostly out of frame. So if you want to render depth first, remember to hide your skeleton. So turn off OpenPose bone, and then render image. This will be your depth map for your hand. So go ahead and save it. I'll call it passes 04. Depth. So next I want to show you guys how to create a second camera. Let me turn on my screencast keys once again. So there's already a camera collection here. All we have to do is just select everything that's inside it, like so. Right click and duplicate collection. So we'll disable our first collection, which is that one, and then we have camera 001. And then go over here to this camera 001, and then if we want to find a new camera angle for the left hand, what we have to do is just make sure we're selecting that camera, and then lock camera to view and just move it like so. And then we get a nice zoom in of this hand. Okay. And once again, if we want to render depth, we'll just turn off OpenPose and then render. And see, we have the depth pass of the left hand now. So once again, save it. So I generated a batch of hands, and then we can take a look at them. Yeah, not bad. Fine. Nice. Sure. Yeah, so you can more or less see that we're getting a lot of usable hands. And I think I'm just going to choose one of these maybe, or I'll just keep generating until I find one that I'm happy with. Okay, so this is one hand I found that I like when I was generating. So I'm just going to take it and bring it into Photoshop. Now we're going to generate the other hand now. So we don't need these old OpenPose. And just bring in the new stuff. So new OpenPose and new depth. Okay. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a batch generation again. So this is the second hand, the left hand. I did a batch run and I got several decent looking ones. Well, not decent, but this one is possible. and I turned off the OpenPose. I got rid of it, and I just used the depth and the Canny. Okay, my Canny's not even enabled, so I just use depth only to get this. So yeah, let's head into Photoshop and I'll show you how I composite these. Alright, back in Photoshop. So I'm going to drag in the hands I generated from text to image in another document. So here's the first one. And one thing I want to draw attention to is that in the bottom left corner, it says 72 ppi. Obviously, this is not the correct resolution. Well, it is if you want to do it for display, but assuming we want this to go to print, hypothetically, we should go for 300 dpi at least. So file, new, and make sure you follow the resolution down here, which is 3072 by 3840, and then 300 for the dpi right here. Okay, create it, and then next I'm going to duplicate this layer to that new document I created. So to do that, just go layer, new, layer from background, like so. So now you can duplicate this, layer, duplicate layer, and then untitled one. So here we go, and it's 300 dpi. So I'm going to do this for the other hand as well. Now that we have our hands here ready to go as photobash pieces, we can bring them back into this original Photoshop document with our character design. However, you might ask the question, what if I'm not an artist? Or what if I don't have that anatomical knowledge? How do I know where to put the hands? Great question, and this is easily solved if you remember the basics of what I showed you in Blender. Remember in our very first pass, we actually generated 3 maps, right? The depth, the OpenPose, and the Canny model, right? So if we bring in the depth pass like that and then we overlay it on top, like so, we can see generally how the hand is proportioned, where it should generally go. Well, it's not accurate because we've made some stylistic choices for the feet and whatsoever. We can more or less gauge the position of where the hand should be or how it should be resized in accordance with the new figure we have here. So if you're doubting, you can also bring in the OpenPose skeleton, decrease the opacity, and see exactly what you're working with. So more or less, this is what we have. The legs are a little long, but you could chalk this up to style. Before we start bringing our hands into the original document for photobash purposes, we might want to fix some things up. There aren't too many things that really need to be fixed because if you think about it, the hands are just kind of an afterthought. They're not really visible if we zoom in like this because we'll be looking at it zoomed out. See, we won't be like, oh yeah, look at that hand. No, this is just a hero character design or a heroine character design. We won't have to be so critical of the anatomy right now, but we should still try to make it look good. So I'm just using the spot healing tool to fix some things that might be an issue. I'm not so sure. Let me just do that. Yeah, I think this is okay right now. And I'll just duplicate it. And you can either mask this out manually like that, but of course we're better than that, right? Or I should hope to think so. So if you go up here in the selection tool, there's quick selection, magic wand, and the very first option is object selection. This tool is kind of a hack, so all you have to do is just click on this and look, we have a selection. And then if we go to the mask like so, we see our hand is automatically masked out. Isn't that kind of insane? Okay, so anyway, now that we have this hand masked out, you can either copy this over to your original character document, or you can do something else, which I usually do is I'll duplicate this and then I'll apply the mask. Right click, apply layer mask. I'll just hide that for now. And what I'll do is I'll convert this to a smart object. The reason I do this is because you can preserve the details. Like you can make it smaller like that, and then if you resize it again, it'll still have all the details preserved, like so. This is one of the cool applications of smart objects. So now that we have this, we'll just copy it over with layer, duplicate, layer, and copy it over like that. So I will pull this down and I'll make a group for it called left hand. And you can see our hand is here right now. Very nice. We'll just resize it like so until we get something satisfactory. And then if we're not sure about the proportions, remember we have our trusty passes. Right now it's saying that our hand's too large, but this is just a guide. Feel free to stylize and trust yourself. So right now, for the time being, try to get it into a proper area. So something like that. Maybe. Might be too small. Might have to be down more. Yeah, maybe. Here we are. I replaced the hand that was here before because I didn't really like how it was looking. It actually looked quite bad. So if you want to check, it's this one. And look how not good that pose is. I like this one a lot more. Just makes sense to me, but of course it's personal preference. And now we want to start changing the colors of the hand, but before we even do that, we have to change the base of the base painting, because you can see that there's already existing hands or things that look like hands there. So this might have to be a little bit smaller, a hand. I'll worry about that later. But okay, so first off, let's make a selection here where that's the stuff we don't want, and then we come back down to our original, and then we'll hide the hands for now. So yeah, let's just go ahead and try to select everything that's in the space. Where's my shift? Yeah, okay. Shift to add to your selection. And then that's the stuff we don't want. And then to get rid of it, you can just go to edit. And then there's an option called content aware fill. So click on that, and then you can see that it's doing that kind of stuff. Even if it's not perfect, just go ahead, say okay. And then you can go back and see where your hands are at, if they fit in. Yeah, that looks fine. Sure, okay. And then once again, make your selection based on what you see here. So if you don't like what's going on here, just select all of it like so. Then let's hide the hands again. Yeah, that whole area seems pretty suspect. I'll even add this part in as well. Okay, and then once again, edit, or make sure you're on that layer. And then edit, content aware fill. Once more, apply. Yeah, so you can see that it actually filled in the machinery behind it too, which is very cool. Okay, and then you can see they created 2 new layers like that. I like to work like pretty non-destructively whenever I can, so that's the reason why I have these extra layers. And then now I'll make a new layer, Control-Alt-Shift-E to combine it all into a new layer. And I'll just move this to its own new group, like so, and hide this down here. Oh, okay, this wasn't even in that group. Okay, So I'll change the color of this as well. Let's go orange. Yeah, okay. So this is like our new generator image. I'll just clean up some more of it with the spot healing brush. Like so. Sure. Now let's go back and look at our hands and try to integrate them in here. So if we go by this, let's see, this hand might still be a little too big. Make it smaller. And then maybe this other hand on the side is too small, so I'll make that one larger. Maybe a little bigger. Sure, I think that'll be fine. And next we'll start changing the colors of it. So it's a good thing that we have the legs, because the legs will be guiding our color reference to make sure that we have the correct color going on. So I'll start with the right one, the right hand, because it seems harder to fix and it's already too yellow, so we have to add some red to it. So let's get to it. Alright, so I'm going to start fixing this hand before I start adding color or changing the color. Right now I'm on a smart object, and if you want to bake down your smart object into a normal rasterized layer, just create a new layer. Make sure your smart object is above it, and then just Control E to merge it down. And now you have a rasterized layer. Next, I'm going to duplicate this. Actually, I won't duplicate it. I'm going to do this, select that portion, and then layer via copy, and just start warping it down because I need more coverage of the hand over here. Like so. And yeah, that looks better. Just a little bit more coverage. So it kind of looks like a glove. Maybe I'll make it a glove. I don't know. Alright, now merge that down. Have a new hand here. Sure, that looks fine to me. So next up, you want to make your hands the same color as this arm over here, or the right hand the same color as this arm. To do that, I'll just turn off the hands for now, and I'm going to make a new layer, merge everything in. So this is the base layer now, and I'm going to select only the arm on this side with my selection, my lasso. And then after I do that, I'll right click, layer via copy, and I'll name this to like copied arm or something. Copied arm 02. Okay, great. I'll turn the hand back on like so. I'll make a copy of this hand just in case, because the thing I'm going to do next is image match color. So go up here, image, then adjustments, match color. And make sure if you're using a very new version of Photoshop like 2023 or 2022, make sure you're on the 8-bit mode for the color mode, because if you're not, you'll get some errors. So for source, I'll just pick my current document. And then for this, I'm going to choose the copied arm 02. And do you see what happened? This hand just became the same color, more or less. So uncheck preview, check preview. Do you see what's happening? Pretty cool hack. Yeah, so all we really care about is getting the colors close enough. And then we can also change some of this on our own. So the colors here are still like not the same as the color here. It looks like the shadows are a little bit magenta or cyan. So we'll just create an adjustment layer. So once again, I'll just turn off all the hands like so. And turn that off. And select one of these legs. Maybe this leg? No, actually I'll select this leg, it's closer. Like that. So you selected the leg, right click, layer via copy. Call this left copy leg. Okay, and then turn the hands back on. Find your left hand, so it's this one. Duplicate it, and then I want to rasterize it, so I'll create a new layer. Then I'll Control E to merge that layer down. So now I have a rasterized hand. Great. Now, same thing, image, adjustments, match color. Find the leg now. Copied leg. Okay, so this is what the new preview looks like. So it's brought up the darks a lot. I guess that's okay. Or not. Okay, I think I'm going to actually choose to go with that match color, but I'm going to use it as a second layer, like a helper layer. So I'll explain what I'm doing. Do the same thing, match color, leave it like that. Then I'll just slowly blend it in with the black mask. So if I add a black mask, you can see I have the original hand here, and it looks like pretty okay already for me. And then I'll slowly paint in like the new hand, like that. Okay, so this is more or less where the image is at. So I photobashed in some very basic hands and made some more fixes. And we'll see. I'm going to inpaint these hands, and hopefully we'll get a more blended result. So let's get to it. I'm going to inpaint the hands, so I'm going to need an inpainting model. So to make that, go here and then create your inpainting model. For A, you put the inpainting checkpoint. For B, put the checkpoint that you are using. For me, it's Fantasy Style version 2. And tertiary C is going to be 1.5 pruned. And then give it a custom name. I'm just going to call it Fantasy Style v2-inpainting. And for multiplier, put it to 1 and then make it add difference. I won't copy the config. I won't bake in a VAE, and I'll do checkpoint and then merge. Okay, so our inpainting model has been created. Time to get to work. Okay, here I am in image to image, and I'm going to change my model to the inpainting model that I just created. And once that loads in, I'm going to paint one of these hands in. This one. Maybe put the denoising a little lower, like 0.15. And inpaint only masked. Okay, that looks fine. Yeah, let's try that. Okay, so do you see how the hand has melded in really well? It even looks like an arcane hand, actually. But yeah, this is pretty good. I might save it, but I might just bring down the denoising a little bit more. 0.15 seems kind of excessive, actually, now that I look at it. Okay, it's done. The color seems pretty off, though. This one looks like... I want one that's like not too red. Maybe the denoising was too high. I'll go back to 0.1. So after several hours of inpainting and photobashing, I've arrived at this current state. Just to highlight where we are now, I want to show the starting image straight out of text to image. So it was this one, and it was pretty low resolution at, I think it was 768 by 960, and the current version is the upscaled version and then inpainted at 1536 by 1920. So it's only 2 times resolution, and the reason why I do that is because I don't want to be inpainting at very high resolution, like 4 times the size, because it'll take a long time. And also the main reason is if you zoom out and look at it, if it doesn't look good zoomed out, it's not going to look good zoomed in. This is like a pretty standard thing. So yeah, just make sure it looks fine from like maybe 50% view, 25% view. Okay, so there's a few more things that I want to add, which are compositional blocking element and upscaling the face. So what I mean by compositional element is you can see here it looks fine, but we want this part to be blocked in with some kind of object so we can focus more. And so this can be parallel with this, like so. And then we have these elements bringing us towards the face. And maybe we can do something like that too. So we'll see. So I created my own compositional elements here. Basically what I did is I selected some parts. I selected this background, and then I just did a layer copy like so, and then copied it in like so. Now I'm going to create a new layer with all of that merged down and just use the spot healing brush to just smooth it out a little, because I need something here for the for Stable Diffusion to know what to remix in. So that looks okay-ish for now. Now I'm going to take it into the web UI. Maybe I'll fix this thing in the back. I'm not sure what that is. It's confused. It should be the ground or something, but okay, that looks better. Okay. In the web UI now, and I brought in my newly created image with this blurry foreground, and I'm just going to inpaint that in. So ideally I want this to become some kind of mechanical part. As you can see with my prompt, I said mechanical pipes, factory environment, rocks, stuff like that. Hopefully it'll remix it properly. Okay, let's try one batch first. Batch count of 1. So this is the image that I got from the web UI. There's some strange robot here, but other than that, it's pretty satisfactory for my use. Looks good to me, except for some weird parts here. It's overlapping the shoe too much, so I'm just going to paint that out. Black mask. Yeah. Make sure there's some clear separation going on there. Next, I'm going to create a new layer, merge it all, and then get rid of this robot with the spot healing brush. See, magic. Such a hack. Yeah, that looks fine for me. Also, this pipe down here is kind of annoying me. Select that. Content aware fill. Sure. And it's created on a new layer so you can paint out what you don't like. So as long as it looks like it's doing what you want, it should be fine. Okay, so that looks okay for me. I did say this should have been like a foreground element, but putting it as a background element also seems to work because the darker local value contrasts it. So, I mean, we have a foreground element here, and then these slowly recede into the background. I think I need a little blocking element in front of here too. Okay. Time for a second compositional element. Be pretty simple, quick and easy. Just this part. I just wanted like a little rock or something here. We'll see what we get. I'll just go ahead and let Stable Diffusion decide for me. You think those pipes look cool? I think they look cool too, Stable Diffusion. Thank you. Very nice. I'm more or less happy with where the image is right now. I'm not going to go too much more on the detail because this should be more or less like a final character design and world building as opposed to a final illustration, which I'll cover in another video. So one more thing I want to check is just the dot gain, so to turn it black and white. And I just want to check my values are consistent right now. More or less they are. If you go, remember I said if you go to the further into the background, aerial perspective, so everything besides the character should be pretty bright. Everything closer to us should be dark, just like the depth pass here. Okay, so let's go ahead and upscale the face. As I mentioned before, we need more resolution on the base image to get a better inpainting result on the face. So let me pull in this flattened image of our character design and upscale it just by 2 again, because I upscaled it by 2 times the resolution previously and then worked on that for a couple hours, and now I'm going to upscale again by 2. So I have, you could say like a 4K image, but yeah. So let's go ahead, upscale. Okay, our upscaling is done. Let's check it out. Yeah, it looks great. Look at that crispy detail. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save it and then send it over to the Inpainting tab. Okay, see how the resolution bumps up to 3072 by 3840? Yeah, we're not going to inpaint the entire image, just the face. So let's go 768, square image, only masked, and then just paint over this face like so. And depends on what kind of denoising you want to use, because if you denoise it too hard, you might get a different image. 0.25 might be a little too high, but we'll see. I'm not sure if I want more resolution or a completely different face. So let's go ahead with batch count of 1 first. And notice that my prompt is female face, and my checkpoint is the Inpainting version I created. I've generally just only been using this Inpainting version since I started the Inpainting phase. Okay, let's check it out. Yeah, it looks like it's working fine. The denoising might be a little too high now that I think about it. I might just go back down to 0.2. So the generations of the face have finished, and there's 20 of them here. I basically went ahead and brought all of them into Photoshop, and I'll show you guys the setup there. Okay, so in Photoshop now, and this is the final base image before putting on the final adjustments. More or less, the face was composited together from a few different images, so it did take a little bit of manual masking in and out. Also, let me see. Maybe I could do another fix here as well. This eyelash seems to be a little off. Something like that. Yeah, that looks a little bit better, but remember, this is basically like a character sheet, so it doesn't have to be so precise. Yeah. Next up is lighting. We'll have to correct some of the lighting in this shot, but shouldn't be too much of a problem. Okay, so now we're in the phase of starting final adjustments. I already enjoy everything that's going on here, but there's some things that I'll need to take into account. So first of all, this right hand doesn't really look like it's blending in too much with the rest of the skin tones. Of course, the skin tones are pretty variable, ranging from very pale like this, and then to very red in the face, and then red here. So what you can do as a quick fix is you can go ahead and select the most neutral color here. I would say it's like, first I'll make a new layer. I'll select maybe this kind of orange here. Yeah, and then I'll use the bucket tool, fill it like so. And I already have a layer mask on here for or a group mask. So I filled everything here, and then what I'll do is put that on a hard light layer like that. And then I'll just decrease the opacity until it looks right. So you can see I've already introduced this new skin tone color, and you can see how well it integrates into this hand right away. See? It really makes a difference like that. So depending on how strong you want it, I've already done another one like that one. So I like this one. It's pretty good. And I'm going to do the same for the, the thighs, because for some reason they didn't inherit the color when I was inpainting them. So let's get to that as well. This time, yeah, I think I'm going to do the same trick. Just grab a local color here, paste it there, and then put it on hard light. Yeah, okay, like so. And I'm just going to go ahead and get a quick selection here. Quick selection. Oh, whoops. Hold shift down to add to your quick selection, like so. Okay, so we more or less have that. Turn that back on. Mask. So you can see I've introduced that that orangish color to the thighs. Pretty cool, right? Yeah. So the hand is still like a little iffy. It's pretty difficult. For lighting, what I like to do is always create a very global layer on top. So this will be my value check. So remember how I showed in the image of myself lying down? If you pull up the whites or if you pull down the darks, right, you can see the values changing. So if I turn down the darks like this, the background should be the brightest. So if you go to grayscale, if you go to proof setup, you can see this. So things that I like and things that I don't like. This part of the background up here should be much lighter. So make a levels adjustment and then just disable this and then bring up the whites like so. Yeah, and then invert it and then turn this back on. This part should be brighter like so, like that. It should be brighter too. Just be very, just have a light touch with it. Okay, so now that's fine. Let's turn off this global layer and then go back to color mode. You can see I've pushed the green back a little bit, maybe too much. So I'll just decrease the opacity of that. Maybe something like that. It's better. Yeah, I like that. Now we'll do the opposite test with this. So now we'll bring up the brights. So if you bring up the brights, you should blow out some of this stuff. So you can see that this pipe is not blown out. So we'll create a new levels adjustment. Bring it up like that. Sure, that looks good to me. And just paint in. So I want to push that back. push some of this back. Okay, and now let's disable and see our changes. See, it makes a difference. Okay, let's go back and check again. So something I don't really enjoy what's going on here is that when I pull this up, the character should not be blown out so much because it's closer to us. The character should actually be darker than the foreground elements of like the rock and whatever, or I would say midground. So same thing, make a new levels. Then try to bring down the midtones like that. And then undo. And then darken the character up like that. So here you can once again do that. Then make sure the character is not so dark. I mean, not so bright, I mean. That. Turn it off. Okay, do you see how that added dimension to our painting? See? Now there's like clear separation, and we can check again with our proof setup like that. The values are looking okay so far. Let's check even further. So yeah. So one problem I see now is that the things behind the character should be blown out before the character gets blown out. Also, this part could be darker. Like that. Let's check again. Sure. Also darker like that. But not too dark. Okay, so now one more levels adjustment. I have to blow out the rocks, if that makes sense. So what's the best way of doing this? Yeah, I'll go with that. Invert it, and then paint in here, like so, and here as well. Maybe some of that. But I do want this arm of the mechanical thing to be closer. This can be blown out as well, like that, but not too much. All right, let's turn that off. Go back to the color and then see how much of a difference that makes. Yep, it's looking good. So this is the lighting group. I'm going to toggle off the lighting group just so we can see the difference it's making. So this is no lighting. You might think, oh, this is great already. And sure, it is pretty good, but that's a high key lighting look. If we want to go a little bit more low key, this is more like dynamic, more dramatic. I don't really like how dark I made the face though, so I'll just paint that out, make the face a little brighter because we want our focal point to be there. So let's check again. Let's paint out a little bit more. And then let's check the lighting again. See, very nice. Then there's a little small thing that's bothering me. Because if you darken all of this, you kind of lose the dimensionality. Remember, the arm is a cylinder. So there's like rounded form. Make sure that's indicated here. Yeah. So now that we have our like local values and global values fixed out, now we can start making like artistic choices. Okay, it's time to start the final lighting pass. First, I like to add a global haze layer to the top. So I'm going to use this original layer I had. And if I pull it up there into that group, you can see that it unifies the image a lot better. It's a global solid color with the blending mode on hard light. So you see it's kind of unifying the image, but it's too strong. So let me turn it down. And this is with it, this is without it. See how much more atmospheric it becomes? Yep. So that's the first step I always do, unifying the colors. Next, I want to add in contrast. So what I do is I go here and I create a curves adjustment layer, and then I pull down around like so. So this is going to be like my shadows. So if you look at this image, you can see the shadows are on the left side, the left front. So that means the light is coming from the back right, and you can see there's a rim light on the head. And so Control I to invert that, and then just start using a black mask to, or yeah, on a black mask, paint in white to emphasize this. And you can have some darkness over here too. And then make sure the face is, like the side of the face is a little darker, like that. Okay, so let's check our let's check our shadows right now. See how that adds more dimensionality to the image. And you probably also want to darken this area too. Okay. Next up is bring in the highlights. So same thing, make a curves layer. This time grab up here and then pump that up really high. Invert it. So it's a black mask, and now you have to paint in your own lights. So light here, light on the hand, kind of like that. This one's pretty tough. Yeah, this one's pretty hard. Just bring some brightness to the face. See how it's like catching light, and then just a little bit of shadow here. And make sure the sides where there's supposed to be a light, make sure there's light. That. Okay, let's check that, where we brighten things up. Okay, I made another layer, or I made another adjustment layer just to brighten up the face a little bit more. But this is pretty okay where it's at. Next up, we need a bloom layer. So basically, a bloom layer is illumination around a character or an object's structure, if that's the most basic way of putting it. And I'll create a new layer, Control-Alt-Shift-E to merge it all into that. Next, I'm going to go to Filter and then Blur. And then I'll give it a Gaussian blur. Blur it up pretty high, maybe like, okay, that's too much. 60, sure, 64. And then next I put this on screen, and then I Control L to bring up, or Control M to bring up the curves. Then just something like that. Then create a black mask. So it's all gone. And now you just paint white in. Okay, that's too strong. So just paint white in around the character like that. And that's bloom. Very interesting. Yep. You can see how it's kind of like a halo-y effect. That's generally what it's used for. Okay, lastly is the camera raw filter layer. This is usually what I use to finish off images. So create a new layer, Control-Alt-Shift-E, and then go up here, filter, and camera raw filter, Shift-Control-A. Okay, so if you look at our curves up here already, or the histogram, it's already telling us that our image is pretty balanced. It's just saying there's too much red, which is easily fixed. You can bring down the temperature, but I like keeping some red. This might be a little too blue, too cyan, but it's okay. The image is well balanced. You can see, yeah. So we won't do anything with exposure. I'll bring the texture up a little bit, or maybe clarity. Yeah, clarity. Look how it crunches up everything, but not too much, just +3. Sometimes I do vibrance. Now is a good time actually. So if you turn up the vibrance, you can see that you have like too much purple or blue. So before doing vibrance, you can go to the color mixer and change the saturation of your blues if you want, like that. Something like that. Yeah, I usually spend the most time in this area, the HSL color mixer. I think that's something I'm happy with. And then if you like that, you can save a setting of it. Okay, let's go ahead and see what this gives us. Okay, yeah, much better. So this is camera raw. This is without camera raw. Look how red this is. So why I like using camera raw at the end is because camera raw doesn't lie. You can check the histogram yourself. Okay, so I'll make this its own camera raw. Okay, lastly is our light rays or God rays. If you look at this image right now, it kind of doesn't make sense hand-wise, because you can see it sticks out. So if you want to fix this, you can add a new layer, pick like one of your ambient colors in the background, maybe like this sharp yellow, and just do this, something like that. And then you can put this on lighten, soft light. Yeah, usually this is like one trick, but let me see. Yeah, see, you need to press harder. So yeah, this is like one way of fixing your values or blending if you're not happy. But so that was the end of the first video about ControlNet. I don't know how many more parts there will be, as there's still tons of applications I haven't gone over. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.